Welcome everyone. We are so happy to have you in attendance for our Free Yourself from Debt workshop, another great workshop in our financial workshop series throughout these 2 months, January and February. We are so excited to have Holly with us. If you attended our in-person lunch and learn, Holly was there presenting. Of course, she always does a wonderful job. So, Holly, welcome back. We're so happy to have you, and I'll turn the time over to you.
Thanks so much, Brittany. First of all, we have a great crowd, and I want to extend my apologies. There was some kind of miscommunication on last week, and so I know all of you had signed up and we're looking forward to it. So thanks for being patient while we figured out where that breakdown was, and thanks for still getting on and spending this time with me. I really, really appreciate it. As Brittany said, my name is Holly Keener, and I am the channel manager with Financial Education. Our team does these amazing presentations. We're really passionate about providing basic financial literacy to businesses, organizations, schools, and universities. And I'll just remind you that in addition to these presentations, all of us offer complimentary one-on-one financial coaching. And I know Brittany has provided the information if you participate in that. And I will also share with you the contact information. It is complimentary. You don't have to be a member. And I know we've had some really great conversations with some of you who have already joined us and signed up for that. So hopefully there's been a value there for you. So today we're going to talk about prioritizing your spending and really freeing yourself up from debt. If you have joined us on our other presentations, you know, we've talked about our emotions and our spending. We've talked about budgeting, which always leads to how do I budget and pay off debt? Or we talk about credit and it's like, well, I have this debt. It's affecting my credit score. So how do I get rid or manage our debt? And that's why this presentation is so great and probably one of our most popular. So my hope and wish is that you take away from this really being able to create the framework for success. What does that look like? Organizing your debt. How do we prioritize it in the order to be a best benefit and value for our financial wellness? Determining a budget. We're going to go back and look at that budget. How do we take what we're currently what we currently have as far as our income and prioritizing that, and then we'll talk about strategies. There's a lot of I think information out there, or you know, our own perception of what we should be doing to help us with that. So we're going to get started with really talking about the framework for success, and I'm really going to just kind of do a brief review when we talk about our money scripts. So when we talk about money scripts, we talk about our own perceptions, our own biases of how we feel about money, how we feel about ourselves when it comes to money, kind of losing our self-love when it comes to staying on a budget. You know, we'll have that conversation in our minds that I'm not good with money, and so I'm never going to be able to stay on a budget, or I'm never going to be able to pay off our debt, or I can't control my spending. So just realizing that all of this is still important information, not only when it comes to your budget piece, but really when we talk about our debts and prioritizing and staying on track. So as a refresher, we've talked about the why, what, and how, right? And we'll go through these individually again, but really knowing why your goal, like why is it important to you to get out of debt? Based off of your why, that's your moral compass, what you value most will lead to what your goal is going to be. It's much easier to achieve a goal if you have a full understanding and tie emotion to why you're wanting to do this. And then how is that very specific information? What is it going to take? What do I need to adjust in my behaviors, in my habits, to be able to reach and have success with my goals? So when we break it down and we're talking about the whys, really understanding what's driving you to pay off your debt? You know, and I've shared with this. So I've spent many times in my life, I was a single mom, raised little teeny boys all by myself. And I remember those up in the middle of the night panic attacks, you know, trying to do the math over and over and over again of not only paying my basic essential spending like living expenses, but you know, not being able to make it in some months, or having kids that were wanting to participate in things and my go-to was my credit card. And so understanding, you know, well, what's important to me is it's affecting my emotions, it's affecting my health, and the stress level because I am in debt. So understanding that that's, even if that's what's important to you, is just having a sense of security or a peace of mind. And asking yourself, what would it be like to be out of debt? Again, I'll go back to my personal experience. What it meant to me was really being able to not constantly have that anxiety of juggling not only my priorities as far as spending, but you know, constantly wondering how I'm going to get caught up with those other expenses that ended up on a credit card. Isn't it good to know that even the considered expert has been through this and knows all about it? And I think that's why I think every single one of us at some point in our lives have experienced this. And so I think that's why we're so passionate about sharing this information. So let's see, what did I do here? Our what? So establishing our goals based off of what it was that was important. So maybe it was that, you know, you value that sense of security, or you're valuing, you know, you have your most important thing is your family and being able to support them. That's where you would base what your goal is with getting out of debt, and basing it really off of, you know, what is a short-term goal? What is a midterm and a long-term? So your short term is going to be within the next 6 months to 1 year. What do you want to pay off? What's going to be the most important? Or 2 to 5 years, or even that long term when you're looking at, you know, 6 to 10 years from now. What are those goals look like? Maybe, you know, it's as simple as paying off one credit card and that's your short term. Or maybe it's paying off your home, you know, 10 plus years from now, because you're in a place in your life where you're looking at retirement and you want to eliminate that, you know, that debt. And then your how, taking advantage of technology with helping you when it comes to being able to pay off those debts, right? So setting up those automatic transfers when you go to make a minimum payment. If you have that automatically coming out, and we've talked about that before, it's out of sight, out of mind, and it is just happening. You know that it's happening. You can budget for it every single month because you've personally set the amount that you're transferring over to that. And then your why. Sharing your goals, especially if you share your expenses with someone, right? Communicating with what those goals are and how you're going to work together with achieving that goal, right? It's very hard to get out of debt that's probably been established by 2 individuals, and only one being on board with getting that paid. And you don't want it to lead to resentment, right? So making sure that it's visible, you've communicated, you have someone that you can go to keep you accountable. If you don't share expenses with someone, reaching out to a friend or another family member, reaching out to a financial coach and setting up a goal and setting those follow-up appointments to, you know, communicate your progress. Side note on that is you don't want to pick an accountability buddy who's not living a financial lifestyle that you want. If you go to somebody, a significant other, and they're just as bad on budgeting, or they're in a lot of debt, they're probably not going to be the best resource for you as far as supporting you with that goal of getting out of debt. So just making sure you identify, someone that you really look up to that is going to help you with staying on track, give you advice and moral support. Taking a moment, right? So we talk about money scripts, but really taking a moment and having that conversation with you with, okay, what led me to this point? What was the life, what happened in life that led me to getting into this debt, right? Was it something, with the pandemic, reduction of hours, losing your job? I've mentioned medical expenses, an unexpected emergency or hospital stay. Those things can be catastrophic. And at that point, you really you really do whatever it takes to make sure that you're being able to just live, right? Essential living. So looking at what it is that got you into the point. Now, if it's something that's been more of an uncontrolled thing, like the medical or loss of job, employment, or is it the fact that, you've got these credit cards and, if you're bored, you go online and you shop. You like to go with friends up to City Creek or at a mall and you see that great deal, right? Buy one, get one free, limited time over, whatever. And there's that constant spending. Was that the purpose or the reason why you're in the situation that you're in? And can you look at eliminating or reducing that habit or what it was? And just really identifying, like this says, like the barriers, what got in the way of being able to stay out of debt. So now that we've kind of reviewed everything that we've talked about in previous presentations, and I'll mention if you haven't been able to join us, I know it's recorded, so you can go back the next few months and kind of get caught up on what that brief little review was. But so let's talk about debts. How do we start? And the first thing you want to do is really identifying or organizing what debts you have. So you can look at how you're going to tackle that, right? The first thing you want to do is identify how you're going to keep track of what you're doing and writing down. And there's no right or wrong way. It's really what you know or feel confident you're going to be able to do to keep up with, keep on top of what your plans are, what your goals are, and how you're going to do it. You can use the digital money management, right? Any financial institution that you belong to, going on that app and looking for those, the identifiers of where you're spending your money, right? I went onto our app last night prepping for this because I was really curious to kind of see where we were spending our money. And boy, I was actually pretty proud of myself because I thought that I was going to have a lot more shopping and eating out than, and actually it wasn't too bad. I spent more at the grocery store. So looking at those things that kind of give you that chart, this is how much you're spending on utilities or home or groceries versus the shopping and the eating out, and those other things. So looking at money management tools like that. A lot of folks really love spreadsheets, right? They really love to keep their debts organized. And that's great. If that's what keeps you on track, if that's what you're comfortable with, create a spreadsheet, right? You can even plug in those formulas that will actually, do that math for you and keep you on track. Or maybe you're like me, right? I'm just basically a notebook and pen. I still use a check register, but really writing down all of the information and how I'm going to tackle it. Assigning a date, that short-term, mid-term, long-term goals of, when I want to be able to achieve what my goals are with my finances. And I'm going to pause and see, Brittany, if if you're monitoring chat, if anyone has any questions at this point.
Lori said that they still use a check register.
I love it. I love it. And I have to share, I was a branch manager for a really long time. And I remember my sweet little teller, I think she was about 18 years old, part-time while she goes to college. She came in and said, "Hey, there's somebody outside looking for something that's got like vines in it." And I knew I had some work to do with coaching and training. Even know what it was. They're like, "Is there a notebook?" So I'm glad to hear I'm not the only one.
I love it. Angie put in there that she uses a combo of Mint and a spreadsheet.
Yeah, Mint is a really popular app that people use to keep track. So that's great. And your mobile app, right? Honestly, look at your financial institution. You know, sometimes you got to go down to the little three bubbles or the little hamburger and pull it up and just go through all of your different options to see how that is. So awesome. Thanks, you guys. I appreciate your participation. All right. So once you've determined pen or paper or your spreadsheet or your app, you want to organize who do you owe, right? Who are those debts to? How much do you owe? I would even suggest what are your minimum payments and what are the interest rates on that? Keep in mind that, you know, if you're looking at credit card debt, credit cards are based off of a variable interest rate and what's happening in our environment right now, right? Our interest rates on lending are going up, and that includes our credit cards. And you're always going to have that index on top of whatever prime is. And so paying attention to things like that, maybe you started out with an introduction interest rate of 0, and then after 6 months, it jumped to 13. And if you look at it today, you're at 25, right? Hypothetical, but make sure that you keep track of where those interest rates are going. And that's going to be really important when I talk about the different strategies. So who do you owe? How much do you owe? What are you making on that payment right now? And the interest rates, right? Really, really important. Including automobile loans or personal loans, signature loans. How much you owe on those. Debt doesn't always have to be just a credit card. Lots of other things. If your goal is to pay off a car or a home, include those when you're keeping track of what you owe so that you can identify short, mid, or long term. All right, so we're going to evaluate our budget. When we talked about budgeting before, right, we talked about really identifying our habits and behaviors, identifying what I've always called those non-negotiable spendings. No matter what happens in our life, we want to have a roof over our head, whether it's a mortgage or rent or splitting, you know, rent with someone that you're living with, making sure that that's prioritized. Your utilities, food on the table, transportation. Always, always budget for those things first, right? Before you can go in, dive into debt, you want to make sure you're managing those things and prioritizing where you're putting your money. So where are you spending your money? And again, going back to the apps, whether it's the Mint or your financial institution that really identifies, you know, your purchases and where you're spending that. Exporting bank statements. So I don't know if you know, like I think about QuickBooks. A lot of people participated, and I don't know, do people use QuickBooks anymore? Remember, I'm a pen and paper person. So being able to export, you know, your spending from your bank statements into some type of a either the spreadsheet or whatever you're doing. And then evaluate your preference purchases, right? So when you look at those spending after you take a look at, you know, how you're spending your money, have that conversation with yourself. Is this a need? Is this a want? what I'm putting my money on or what I'm putting on those credit cards, are these all things that, I can reduce the spending or even completely eliminate that spending? What am I spending money on that really, like, I don't even remember what that transaction was, or the box gets delivered and you have to think, what was it that I ordered last week that's now been shipped to my door? All right. Then after you've prioritized and you've looked at your budget, you want to determine how much you can set aside for savings or even extra payments, right? We've talked about that. Pay yourself first, even if it's a minimum amount. Maybe you start out putting the savings with that $10, $20, making sure you're taking advantage of things like pensions or 401ks that your employer offers, making sure that you're at least starting out with those type of things. And then what's left over, and how do we look at those preferred spending, and can we take that money and really apply it for extra payments? And then making sure that you're continuing, we've talked about in budgeting, secondary savings accounts, planning for those upcoming expenses. Spring, summer's coming. Boy, we really made it through last summer with that air conditioner. We were lucky. It's probably a possibility that's going to need to be either replaced or repaired. So be thinking ahead. What holidays, all those kinds of good things that come up pretty much unexpected, but we know eventually is going to come up, and we're going to need to have that money put away. Any questions there? Okay. So we're going to talk about strategies. How do you prioritize? What's going to be the best way of getting out of debt? How do I do that? So there's a couple of things. Before we go into a lot of strategies, I want you to know that you can, again, you don't have to be a member, but you can go on our website. You can go into that /bonsai, and there's a lot of content that you can spend time with reading, tools and resources, calculators, all of that stuff that's going to help you as far as the math and, kind of go in more depth over the strategies that I'm going to share with you. All right, so here are some of your options. So we have, snowball your debt, and I'll go into more details with that. So there's a snowball or there's an avalanche, right? We're in Utah, best snow ever this year. So we know exactly what both of those things are. Looking in or considering refinancing, consolidating your debt. Instead of paying, 5 or 6 different payments, consolidating that down into one. Taking advantage of offers like balance transfers is a really good option as well. And then we're going to just talk a little bit about GreenPath, which does a great job with people who are really needing help with debt management and literally helping you or holding your hand when it comes to contacting the people that you are, that you owe that money to, and making those arrangements. All right, so the first one is the snowball. The snowball is really, organizing the debt from the smallest balance to the largest. And this really, a couple of different scenarios. A lot of people who are really wanting to focus on repairing their credit. If you have the smallest to the highest balances, a lot of time it's just really great to tackle those smaller balances first, right? Okay, so a lot of people have this conception of, well, I have these credit cards, but I add $50 every single month on all of them to help pay those down sooner. With interest rates, if it's a revolving card or any kind of debt, right? If you have more than one debt that you're trying to pay off, taking, instead of, oh, I add $50 to, 4 of my credit cards in addition to my minimum payment, taking that $200, continue to make the minimum payment on those, but taking that additional $200 and applying it to the smallest balance. Once that gets paid off, it falls off the credit report. It's been paid. Boom, credit will go up a little bit, right? For every single one. A lot of times people, it helps them just personally with their, with being proud or excited. It keeps them motivated to keep going because, they've accomplished that smaller goal and they're just working themselves up. Now, when you take that extra money, so let's say the 4 and the $50, you take that 200 and you add it to that minimum payment. Once that gets paid off, you have been budgeting all along for that whole payment to apply to that debt. You take that and you go to the next one, right? Whatever is the next payment, smallest to largest. Once that's paid off, again, you have already been able to manage that extra payment on top of the minimum. All of that goes on to the next one. So it's really kicking it in gear with that additional money that's going to help you. You're going to pay them off quicker by doing so. So you just keep going with that system until everything gets paid off. But I mean, it is really good if you've got even a lot of debts that are all basically the same amount. Another option is the avalanche, right? So just the opposite. You list all of those debts with interest rates, right? Your highest interest rate to your lowest, because your overall savings, right? If you're adding that $200 on top of that minimum payment, while you continue to make those minimum payments on those other obligations, when you get that paid off, look at the savings you have if you are paying 20% interest versus maybe the lower interest rate card at 10. So tackling the highest interest, you're going to save so much more money doing that way. And again, same system. You take that higher interest rate obligation, make those additional payments. When that's paid, and this really takes dedication or commitment, right? Knowing, hey, this is my goal to get out of debt. I'm not going to get distracted with maybe another opportunity to purchase something. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take that money and add it on to the next one until it's paid off, and on until everything gets paid off. Does that make sense? Okay, so refinancing. First of all, commit to no more debt, right? Again, like I mentioned, if your goal is to get out of debt, staying focused, again, the accountability buddy, sharing your goals with someone else, that when you get that temptation to add to the debt, buy a new toy, right? It's going to be summer. Do I need the razor? Do I need the jet ski or whatever? When you get tempted to make those kinds of purchases, you're adding to your debt. So having someone that you can go to and talk through it with someone, if you have a hard time talking yourself through that, but committing to no debt, not until you are paid off and you can start saving for maybe a midterm or a long-term goal of being able to buy those things that you're being tempted for. And then contacting your creditors and negotiating. If you are behind, if you are experiencing, financial hardship, and there are things that you have just, maybe you're late a month or two or more, it's really important that you're proactive and you reach out to those obligors and you tell them, be honest. Hey, I'm experiencing a hardship. This is what is happening. Can you help me out with this? See if they can help you with changing your terms, whether it's lowering an interest rate for a short period of time or extending the term so the payment is reduced. Really being proactive. They're not going to go away. Those debts are still going to be there, and it's just going to create more and more anxiety. Take that off of your back. Make those calls. See what they can do to work for you. I mentioned GreenPath, that debt management program. They do that exact thing for you. And the reason why I mentioned the GreenPath is I know everyone are familiar with some of those different businesses that reach out and say, we can improve your credit score. We can get you out of debt. GreenPath is a reputable company. Mountain America would not co-brand with them if they did not have confidence that they're really probably one of the best options. Because a lot of times, right? So I talk about contacting your creditors. A lot of times those organizations, they do the things that you can do yourself for free. So even if you say to yourself, well, I'm not going to pay a creditor or I'm not going to pay an organization to help me. Instead, I'm going to commit 30 minutes every other day to contact one of those creditors and ask for some type of relief or support, one way or the other, to help me through this time so I don't default, right? People would rather work with you and get a little bit of something rather than take an entire loss on it. Determine your strategy and consolidation. So personal loans. Here's the thing about a personal loan. It's quite honestly, if you're taking out a personal loan with a financial institution, they're a little bit harder to get than if you have some type of collateral. Because a lot of times when you're looking at a personal loan, financial institutions can look at it like, well, you know, you've got all of these debts and we're going to pay those people off, but now we are taking the risk that we will suffer a loss, but they're no longer going to do that. But, you know, if you're in a situation where you don't, I mean, it's always worth talking to your financial institution about that option. And a lot of times personal loans, they have a maximum amount that they'll lend. You'll just have to have that conversation with your institution on what your options are. A home equity loan, that's a great thing, right? If you are collateralizing any kind of loan, whether it's with a home equity loan, and I say loan versus a line because a line, again, if you have a home equity line of credit, you're only obligated to make that interest only payment for like the first 10 years. So if you know that you're going to be able to consolidate your debt, pay them all off, securing it with your equity in your home, you just are going to have to make sure you're committed to getting that paid off and not just be paying that minimum payment. So that's the home equity line. On a loan, it is collateralizing it with the equity that you have in your home, but it has a start and an end date, and it has a fixed interest rate. And if you were to do it now, like a lot of people are just worried about lending rates. When rates go down, you refinance and you get that lower interest rate, but you're still going to have a lower rate on some kind of collateralized loan than if you were to look at an unsecured loan as like a personal loan. Looking for those ways to reduce your interest rate. And that's where I say, try to think of something that you can collateralize. Do you have a car is another option. A lot of people have paid down their car and they owe, you know, it's worth more than what they owe. So a lot of times you can, almost take advantage of the equity that you have in that, refinance the car and take the cash out to pay off your debt. There's a lot of people that say, okay, well, I purchased my car and I'm at 2.99 or I'm at 2%, right? Interest rates have been pretty low over the last several years. So a lot of people have purchased cars, they're at that lower rate. And so when you say, well, take the equity out of the car or take the equity out of the trailer or the boat, if you've got titles to those toys, whatever it is that you can use. A lot of people say, well, why would I get rid of my 2% auto loan and increase it to a 5% auto loan to pay off my debts? It's called blended rates. So if you have something that you can, that you're currently at a lower interest rate and using either the title if it's paid off or the equity in it that you owe less than what it's worth, you have to think about you're paying off debts, obligations that are 10 plus, 15 plus, 20 plus. So if you take all of those debts that are at that higher interest rate, even if you're refinancing whatever you're collateralizing it with and it increases your rate from a 2 to a 5 or a 6, again, you have a start date, an end date, a fixed rate, and it's blending all of those higher interest rates into that one loan, right? You're going to pay off all that debt. Look at all the money you're going to save when we listed all of our obligations, highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. So really want to make sure people understand, because there's a lot of people that say, well, that's a 2%. I really don't want to lose that. But if you look at the big picture of how much you're paying in interest on those other obligations, it really is to your advantage. Okay.
So, Holly, sorry,
Yeah.
real quick question. So, if you were to consolidate all of your loans, right? Can you, I hate using this word, like not cheat the system, but could you pay, like do the payments where you split it in half, and you pay, so say your due date for your payments at the first of the month. The month prior, you pay half of what you owe, and then before it's due, you pay that second half of what you owe. And
Yeah.
do you end up paying interest on that?
Right. So bi-monthly payment.
Yeah.
Right. So it's going to depend on the financial institution and what type of loan. So I know that that is an option for a lot of lending. I think the one loan that typically frowns on bi-monthly payments are mortgages, right? A lot of mortgage companies don't want to have that, because what happens is if you make those bi-monthly payments, by the end of the year, you've made a full payment, a full extra payment, which makes you pay things off a lot faster. So that's a really great question, Brittany, because if your financial institution or wherever you have that loan at, ask for that option. The other thing that I love about that is if you're trying to stick within a budget, a lot of people are super top heavy with monthly bills, right? Because it's usually our rents and our mortgages and utilities that come at the first of the month. So also work with your financial institution on that due date, because if you can split your expenses where those higher payments like a mortgage or rent the first of the month, make sure that you're asking the institution, hey, I'm a lot more comfortable with my finances if we can put this after the 15th. So the 15th through the 16th versus the 1st through the 15th. But absolutely ask if it's an option to have bi-monthly, because it is a great way to tackle those debts quicker. Again, especially with mortgages. And that's why a lot of them don't like it because they don't want you to pay it off. So check with your financial. Thanks for that question.
Thank you.
So balance transfers. This is another option. So taking advantage of those lower interest rates on cards. So if you have balances on other cards that have a higher interest rate, but you get that introduction offer, you know, maybe it's 0%, 6 months to a year. That's another option, right? Especially when you're talking about those personal loans and those unsecured loans. Those are higher interest rates than collateralized, but they're basically offering you that limit at that lower rate. But remember, you have to make sure you are committed to paying that off within that introduction rate, whether it's a 6-month to a 12-month. You want to really figure out when you're talking about the how, what does that look like for my budget? How much do I need to pay on that balance transfer to get that paid off? And that's where you want to make sure you're utilizing tools like automatic transfers or automatic bill pay. So it's out of sight, out of mind. You don't get tempted to just paying the minimum payment. One thing to consider on things like balance transfers are what happens if you don't pay it off during that introduction period, that 6 months to 12 months. A lot of cards will tack whatever interest that 6 months or 12 months would have been, they tack it onto your balance. So you want to pay attention to those terms and ask those questions. The other thing is, what is your fee? So if you were to do a balance transfer, a lot of institutions will charge you a percentage rate of whatever that balance is that you're transferring. So that's kind of where they make up for offering the lower rate for an introductional period, is because, you know, they may be charging you 3, 4, 5% of whatever balance is that you're transferring over on their card. So make sure, read those terms, ask those questions, make sure that you know and understand, and then really figure out the how. How are you going to do it, and be committed to it? This is just an example, right? So you have 3 credit cards. You know, your first one, you know, you're maxed out at 8,000, then you're maxed out at 2,000, and those interest rates are 16%, 24%. Well, you get that introductory offer at 11%. That's sure a lot better than this, you know, 16 or 24%. So, you know, you're making those minimum payments with those higher interest rates. You know, it's going to take you 58 months to pay off that $8,000 balance, or it's going to take you 82 months to pay off that $2,000, right? So if you were looking at an avalanche, which one would you focus on, right? That 24% interest rate and then move on down. But in this case, if you were to take those balances and put that on that 11% card, and you made that same, you've been paying the $200 minimum, you've been paying that $50 minimum, you just apply it to that 11% balance, you're going to pay it off sooner, right? And you're going to pay a heck of a lot less on overall interest, right? So you're going to pay that off in 51 months, both cards, versus the one at 58 and then the other one at 82. So there are benefits of being able to utilize those offers. Again, just make sure you are committed to taking advantage of that offer. No more debt, and committing to making additional payments during that introductory offer. All right. All right, so here is the GreenPath. Again, the one-on-one financial coaching, we offer that complimentary. You don't have to be a member. Meet with one of us. Have us go through those debts with you. Let us help you do it on your own. Let us take a, time to kind of talk about what's going to be your best strategy and how you're going to do it. If it is something where you think, well, it's going to be really hard for me to stay committed to that, or I really do need to have someone help me literally make those calls, then let us recommend the GreenPath program. You're more than welcome to just go to them and check that out, but really reach out to us and have us take an assessment of your situation and make our offer or suggestions. And then you can determine at that point, is it something that we can work together on or you can do on your own? But they will help you create a pay down plan with minimum payments, the interest rates, the fees, and all of that good stuff. So it is an option, but wouldn't you rather talk to me first? So here are your action items. So understanding, right? Use your why, your what, and how. This is so important. And again, if you missed the budgeting presentation, looking at what's most important to you, naming your money, being, knowing exactly how you're going to do it. What's it going to take? Is it going to take that snowball? Or is it going to take that avalanche strategy? What's going to work best for you? What do you know that you feel confident you're going to be able to do and works best for you or whoever you're sharing your expenses with or your obligations? But understanding and having that conversation again with yourself, with your accountability buddy, a financial coach, whatever it is, review that and stick to it. Listing your debts, again, prioritizing, okay, here's what I have to pay to survive. Here's what I'm putting away in my savings for my, and then here's who I owe money to. Who, how much, interest rate, even the payment. And then determine that strategy. Are you going to tackle it with the avalanche or the snowball? So I check with your financial institution, right? But I work for Mountain America. If you are a member, or even if you are not a member, you can go into any branch and you can say, can you do a value analyzer, right? What they do is it is just the coolest program where you take in all of your debts and they do that prioritizing for you. Who you owe, what you owe, the interest rate, and your payment. And it organizes it all out and gives you options on paying that off and how much you're going to save. So know that that's also available. That value analyzer tool, any branch, any loan officer can pull that up and do it for you. So it's really super cool. Evaluating your budget, determining your strategy. So these are all of my action items for you, my homework assignments for you to go out and get that taken care of. This is me. This is my one-on-one financial coaching. You can scan that QR code, or you can even just go to the OnceHub/Holly Keener. And I can come back to that in a few minutes. But this is one that's for the FinEd team. Like I mentioned, I'm the channel manager for financial education. So sometimes my team is a little bit more available than I am. Reach out, look at my calendar if it doesn't fit. All of us have dedicated time to keep open so we can provide coaching for members and our non-members. So take advantage of that. And this is just a little trivia quiz. This really helps me and my team know if the content that we are delivering is really valuable to you. I think the questions are, did you learn something new? Did you learn something that you're going to implement into your life? And if I get yes answers on both of that, I get paid. If I don't, then I've got to reevaluate my content and make sure that it does add value to your life. Is there a slide you want me to go back to? Or any questions in the chat, Brittany?
We have one. Does Mountain America let you have multiple debit cards that you can use like the envelope system?
Yes, they're called express cards. So the express cards are and I encourage them for budgeting. Just like that envelope, right? It's an electronic envelope where you can say, this is what I'm going to spend on shopping. This is what I'm going to spend on eating out. They're really cool. They're just a blank Visa debit card. You can go in and nickname them what they're for. I have probably 10 in my wallet right now. And on the back in permanent marker, I've put down like online shopping, or that way it's not tied to your checking account. The other great thing about it is you take whatever you're budgeting for and you put it on that card. And once it's gone, it's gone. So when you get to a balance of $20, you have to decide if what I'm about to spend my last $20 on my express card that I'm budgeting for, is it worth doing that, or do I want to hold off or something else? So yes, they do offer express cards and also secondary savings. If you're looking at putting money away for savings, you can nickname those as well. Good question.
The other question that we have is, can you set up automatic payments when not being used for a bill, but to set aside for separate accounts for the express cards or accounts in general?
Yeah, so if I'm understanding right, so if you have an express card, you can set up those automatic transfers. So, if you get paid on the 5th of every month, you can set up those automatic transfers to just allocate into those express cards. So after you set up all, go ahead.
I also know that on our side with Salt Lake County, you can go in on PeopleSoft, our place where we see our paychecks and everything like that, and you can actually allot different percentages of your paycheck to go right into different accounts. So like if you want half of your paycheck to go into checking and half to go into savings, you can do that, and it will automatically do that when you get paid, which is also a cool one as well. So
Yes.
something to check out on our end too.
I'm gonna put that back up. Yeah, and honestly, that is really great. And I will even add, you can have additional money go towards taxes. So, right, we're right there at that tax season. So, in addition to however you're filing, if you know that you're going to end up paying, in addition, have it set up through your payroll to have it automatically taken out and put aside, or add it to whatever you're paying in taxes, because sometimes refunds are funner than an invoice. Good questions. Awesome. Well, you guys, we just love our partnership with Salt Lake County, and we just really look forward to working with all of you. We're so happy that you had us back, and honestly, we're available for you. So utilize us again, right? This is part of your wellness program. So utilize that partnership.
Yes, definitely. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much, Holly, again, for another fabulous presentation. And we also really appreciate you guys and the services that you offer. Like Holly said, please take advantage of the one-on-one help, the financial coaching. It is amazing. We've heard so many great stories and feedback from going and participating with Holly's team on that one-on-one financial coaching. So please take advantage of that. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself. You can email our myhealthylifestyles@slco.org. But at that, thanks, Holly. We hope you have a fabulous day, and we can't wait to see you soon.
All right. Thanks, you guys. Have a good day.